Puhutaan suomee. Welcome to part 5 of my conversational Finnish learning material. In this part you will learn to ask what someone is doing and answering to the same question. This material is always in 2 parts. In the first part you will learn the topic by repetition, and in the second part I will explain the grammar and vocabulary in more detail. This time I recommend listening to the explanation section as well, since it is very useful information about personal pronouns, a little bit of verb conjugations, and I will explain the concept of standard and casual Finnish, and how that makes this learning material differ from other materials you might come across in both vocabulary and grammar. As always, we won't have any written Finnish in the first part of the video, because I want you to train your ears to hear Finnish well. It might feel difficult at first to not have any written cues for pronunciation, but it will hopefully pay off in the long run. First, you will learn some phrases to ask what someone is doing, and answering the question yourself. Then I have 3 short conversations with liekki and use the phrases. You will see translations in English for the phrases and as we speak. Remember to repeat after us so you'll memorize it. Mitä sä teet? Mitä sä puuhaat? Mä opiskelen. Mä teen läksyi. Mä teen töitä. Mä piirrän. Mä teen ruokaa. Mä pelaan. Mä laulan. Mä tanssin. Mä katon videoa. Mä nukun. Mitä toi tekee? Se opiskelee. Se tekee töitä. Se tekee ruokaa. Se pelaa. Se laulaa. Se katsoo videoa. Se tanssii. Se nukkuu.
Mitä sä puuhaat?
Mä katon videoa.
Ok.
Mitä sä teet?
Mä piirrän. Mitä sä teet?
Mä pelaan.
Moi, mitä toi tekee?
Se nukkuu.
Mitä sä teet?
Mä teen läksyjä.
Now I'll explain some things we learned today. I also want to point out that this part of the lesson is always for more detailed explanations, but not necessary to learn in order to speak Finnish. This time though, we are going to learn stuff that I deem so useful that I would suggest you to listen. We will learn personal pronouns, a little bit of conjugations, and I will explain how Finnish is not actually a coherent language, which makes this material and other learning materials sometimes inconsistent. First, let's start with personal pronouns. Finnish has 6 personal pronouns. Minä, sinä, hän, which is a gender-neutral third person, me, te, he. When speaking, minä and sinä are almost always shortened, and third persons are replaced with se and ne, literally it and they that refers exclusively to things in standard Finnish. In spoken Finnish, it is not considered rude to call someone it, and calling someone by hän usually has a very formal connotation. This brings us to a topic I have not yet discussed in the series, but it is a very important part of this material and learning Finnish in general. If you're not that familiar with Finnish, you might not know that Finnish has quite separate spoken or casual language and written or standard language, which means that usually the way people speak is quite different from the way Finnish is written. This does not mean that the Finnish writing system does not mirror how Finnish is pronounced, but that there are 2 clearly different ways to use Finnish. This is based on the fact that Finnish was standardized when its writing was being invented by combining different dialects at the time. This does not, of course, mean that the versatile ways of how Finnish people speak went away and stopped evolving. More formal things like literature and legal documents tend to be in standard Finnish, called kirjakieli, literally book language, and conversations like talking with people and text messages tend to be in casual Finnish, called puhekieli, literally spoken language. Almost all language materials for Finnish are for standard Finnish, but here's the thing. No one speaks standard Finnish. In general, the idea is that if you know standard Finnish, you should pretty easily understand how it relates to casual Finnish, and thus understand speech. But for a non-native speaker, it is not actually that easy to understand casual Finnish if you have only learned standard Finnish. Which means that even if you have studied standard Finnish for quite a while, you still might find it difficult to understand people speak. In this material, I do not teach standard Finnish. I teach casual Finnish. We will learn from time to time how different levels of formality and casualness can bring spoken Finnish closer to standard Finnish or further away from it, but we will always look at it from the perspective of having a conversation. Keep this in mind because you might come across surprisingly different vocabulary and conjugations between this material and most other Finnish learning materials. Also, I teach the way I speak, which is of course affected by where I live, which is Helsinki. I would like to include other dialects in the material as well, but I don't want to get you confused this early on your learning path, so for now you will learn to understand and speak like we do in Helsinki. If you would like to know more about the differences between standard and casual Finnish with examples, I'll link a blog post I wrote about it in the description. Now that we know all that, we can conclude that the casual Finnish personal pronouns are mä, sä, se, me, te, ne. Now that we know the personal pronouns, let's get to the verbs. In Finnish, verbs conjugate by person. Let's look at a few verbs we had in the phrases today as an example. Let's focus only on the singular forms for now. Don't worry, we'll get back to the other forms later. Tehdä means to do. We can conjugate the verb as follows. Mä teen, sä teet, se tekee. Let's pick another verb, opiskella, to study. We get mä opiskelen, sä opiskelet, se opiskelee. And a third one, let's pick tanssii, to dance. We have mä tanssin, sä tanssit, se tanssii. From these phrases, you can recognize that the first person seems to end with an, and the second person seems to end with te. That is no coincidence, since an and te are the personal endings for first and second singular. The third person is more difficult, however. Verbs in Finnish are usually categorized by how the third person present time ends. There are 5 basic verb types and a handful of irregular verbs. I will not go through the types here because 1, I still want to have emphasis on intuitive language learning, and 2, the basic rules and conjugations are not that straightforward since they are made for standard Finnish. However, if you like grammar, I'll link some resources in the description, but be aware that they are resources for standard Finnish, not for casual Finnish. Thus, they might have different forms, for example, that you learned in this video. For now, I would recommend remembering that for present time singular, verb in first person end with an and second person end with te. Third person often ends with a long vowel, like tekee, opiskelee, and tanssii, but not always. Let's not care about verbs type groups, but let's just learn to conjugate some of them in present time in singular. Don't forget to repeat after me to learn them better. Mä piirrän. Sä piirrät. Se piirtää. Mä pelaan. Sä pelaat. Se pelaa. Mä laulan. Sä laulat. Se laulaa. Mä katon. Sä katot. Se kattoo. Mä nukun. Sä nukut. Se nukkuu. We will learn more verb conjugations later on, and we'll take small steps to master them. Remember that practice makes perfect. That's all. Siinä kaikki. Ensi kertaan!